Ever wonder why a 4K transcode stutters, even when your CPU looks idle? Or why your Plex server sometimes buffers out of nowhere, even though your server seems fine? Or maybe you just want a better way to keep an eye on things, your CPU temps, disk health, network speeds, or how many users are streaming at once. Today I'll show you how to monitor your Plex server like a pro, with a single dashboard that brings everything together. We're talking full visibility, CPU, GPU usage, drive temperatures, smart health, network throughput, and even which Plex sessions are transcoding, all in one place. And by the end of this video, you'll be able to build it yourself. This video is sponsored by Plex for Plex Pro Week 2025. Big thanks to Plex for supporting the channel and for letting me share this deep dive on monitoring your Plex server. We'll be using Plex's API along with Prometheus, Grafana, to build a truly monitor all the things dashboard. So here is the dashboard. The top row gives you at-a-glance server specs, plus some brag-worthy stats to impress your friends. The next few rows are all about live data. On the left, we track real-time CPU, GPU, and drive usage and temperatures, and even the GPU power draw. On the right, it's all about Plex activity, active streams, transcodes, what's playing, and even more detailed library breakdowns. And underneath that, charts. Lots of charts. We're talking device temperatures over time, GPU encoder and decoder utilization, and a bunch of other visuals to help you spot bottlenecks before they become problems. By the end of this video, you'll be able to build this dashboard end-to-end and customize it to show you exactly what matters most to you for your Plex server. So you've built up your media collection, now let's make sure that your Plex server keeps it smooth. Here's the stack we'll be using to make this all happen. Let's kick things off with a quick review with the stack just in case you're new or need a refresher. So Plex is our media server. It has an API that exposes activity like current streams, and we're going to tap into that. Prometheus is a time series database. It scrapes metrics from various endpoints on a schedule. Grafana is the visualization layer. That's what gives us pretty charts, thresholds, and alerts. And exporters? These are small services that expose a metrics endpoint, exposing data into Prometheus-friendly metrics. They're lightweight and easy to run. Now you're probably asking, what about Tautuli or PlexDash? Plex does give you some monitoring with their dashboard and even their PlexDash app, which is a great way to check on some basic stats about your server. And Tautuli is awesome for Plex-focused stats like play history, user activity, and notifications. Now, I'm not replacing it. This dashboard just goes deeper, giving me server-wide insights like CPU and GPU temps, encoder and decoder activity, smart data, and container-level networking, stats that give you a holistic view of your Plex server. Plus, Prometheus and Grafana are widely used across the monitoring world, so once you've learned the stack, you could use it in your home lab, your NAS, or even at work. All right, let's break this down into the exporters I'm using and why. So first up, we have Prometheus Plex Exporter. Now this pulls in Plex activity, current sessions, who's streaming, what's transcoding, and overall library metrics. This is core to the stack, and without it, I wouldn't have a video. It's great, however, I forked this exporter to add a few additional features. Next, we have Node Exporter. This gives us core system metrics like CPU usage, memory, file system usage, disk I/O, and network throughput. I like to think of these metrics as the vitals to our system. Then we have the DCGM Exporter, which is NVIDIA's data center GPU management exporter. That's a mouthful, but this one is awesome. I can see GPU utilization, memory use, encoder and decoder activity, temps, and even power draw. And if you're on AMD, look for the ROCm Device Metrics Exporter for similar metrics. After that, we have the Smart CTL Exporter. This taps into our hard drive smart data, showing us temperatures, bad sectors, power on hours, and overall disk health. This is a must-have for keeping tabs on your disks. For thermal data, I'm also using Node Exporter's HWMon collector. That gives us CPU temps, NVMe controller temps, and depending on your server, fan speeds too. And finally, there's cAdvisor. Since I run Plex and most of my stack in Docker, cAdvisor lets me break out per container CPU, memory, restarts, and most importantly, network bandwidth. That's how I can isolate Plex traffic from everything else. Worth noting that your mileage may vary based on your hardware and which operating system you're running your Plex server on. And if you're running it on Windows, there's an exporter designed specifically for it, which is called Windows Exporter. So let's build this monitoring stack. Now I'm using Docker for all of these applications. You don't need to use Docker, and you especially don't need to use Docker for Plex if you're already running Plex. I'm just running it in Docker because it makes it a little bit easier, and it makes it easy for me to combine all of these services in one stack and explain it. And all of this will be available in a GitHub repo, and I'll have that linked in the notes in the description below. But you can see in my stack, I'm running some services. I have the Plex service here. And again, you don't need to run Plex in Docker. I just have it here because I'm running it in Docker. And you can configure this whole entire stack on your machine and point it to your own Plex instance. Pretty basic. Plex is running, exposed on the port 32400, and then we have our volume mounts here. Pretty basic, right? Next, we have Plex Prometheus Exporter. And if you remember, that's the service that's able to get data from Plex and expose it to Prometheus so we can put it in the database. So a little tiny service that knows how to talk to Plex and knows how to talk to Prometheus. And if we look at it, pretty basic stuff, not a lot going on. The interesting thing though is in the .env file. So if we go into the .env file, you'll see I have some environment variables. And so these are environment variables that get set when the service stands up, and they're variables that the service is looking for, hoping that you've defined them. So the first one is TZ for time zone. You can set that if you like. Mine's America/Chicago, and I set that so the logs are in my local time zone. Next, you'll see Plex server, and then the address to my Plex server. Now you might notice that it says Plex 32400. You might be wondering why it says that. And that's because in my Docker Compose stack, for this whole entire stack, I defined the service name Plex as Plex. So then I can refer to it in this stack as Plex. Now, most likely, you're not going to be doing that. You're most likely going to refer to it by your IP address, something like 192.168.0.100, and then the port. Then there is a catch. If you only require secure connections to your server, that's a server setting, you'll need to change this to HTTPS, which introduces another problem, and half the reason why I forked this repo and extended it is that you'll need to add another flag that says skip TLS verification true. Now, why are we doing that? Well, if you connect to the Plex server on HTTPS and the IP address, the certificate name doesn't match the IP address that you put in, so you're gonna get a certificate error. This certificate is provisioned to some really weird number and then Plex direct, and I think the port is 8443. And the way that I know that, it's because that's the URL that you get your token from. So I'll have some documentation how you get your token. It's a couple of clicks. But if you notice, when you go there, you have a URL that actually points to some weird number.plex direct in this port. If you put in that address here, you won't get any certificate errors and everything will be fine. But if you don't want to do all of that, you can just add this flag that I said, which is skip TLS verification, and put in your IP address. That's what I do because it's a lot easier than trying to do the other thing. I did mention Plex token. That's a secret. Keep it a secret. Don't give it to anyone. And the rest of the things that we see in the stack are all the things I talked about a little bit earlier. Node exporter to get our metrics from our system or our node or our server itself. DCGM exporter to get metrics from our video card. Smart CTL exporter to get data and metrics from our hard drives. And then CA Advisor to get data and metrics from the containers that are running on our server. So next in our stack is Prometheus. And again, this is the time series database that's housing all of our data and our data points. And so there isn't a lot to configure here. You will see some volume mounts here, and you will see we are hosting it on port 9090. If you do go out to port 9090, you will see that Prometheus is hosted here. Now there isn't a bunch to do here. One thing I will recommend to do is to go into the status area, go to target health, and then make sure you see all of your exporters here. And you can see all the ones that I have set up, and you can see that they're scraping, and you can see the last scrape time. So this is a good sign if they're all up and they're all green. If you go back to the query page, this is where you can query your Prometheus data to see if it has all of your time series information. And here you use the PromQL language. Now, I don't know it that well, but I did learn for troubleshooting and debugging that all of my jobs are tagged with Plex. And if I want to search through, my Plex exporter to make sure it has data, I can say job equals Plex here, and then I hit enter, and then I can see data coming back from that exporter. So this is a good sign. Then last in our stack is Grafana, and that's how we visualize all of our data. And so one thing to call out on Grafana, other than the port is running on 3000, is that we will need to provision these paths. And so by including them here, it allows me to share all of these dashboards with you, which you can kind of see right here, all of these dashboards, and these will be pre-provisioned for you when you start it up. And I'll have those included in this repo. So to start up the stack, you would just copy all of these files and all of these folders to your server. And then you would run a command like this, which is docker compose up-d to run in the background. And then I say -- force - recreate, which for me is going to recreate all of these containers because I have them running. But if you run that command, you'll see it pull down all of these images, and then you'll see it start all of these services as well. And then if you go to port 3000, you'll see Grafana running. What you're looking for is the dashboard section. You usually find it at the top. And then in there, you can see all of those dashboards I was talking about that I've provisioned for you. So a lot of dashboards in here. We want to go to Plex Media Server Dashboard. And if you go into there, this is my Plex Media Server Dashboard. So I've designed this so that at a glance, I can tell how my server's doing. So everything above the fold, or where this line is right here, I can look at and say, how's my Plex server doing? And if I look at it, it's doing pretty okay right now. Now you'll notice over here that I'm not streaming anything because it says zeros across the board. So let's stream something really quick. So back in my movies, let's just stream and transcode something. So let's play this. There we go. And then I want to transcode it down to 720p. So let me go back to our dashboard really quick, and this should light up here in a little bit as I'm explaining it. So on the left side of the dashboard, you'll see some heads-up display. Some of it's kind of static, but it's really nice for me to see at a glance which server I'm on and what the specs are. First up is my CPU. My CPU is not really going to change, but I like having it here so I know exactly which model of CPU I have, and plus it fits along with the rest of the data that I have. Next, I have our core count and thread count. So this has 8 cores. Each of those cores have 2 threads, so I have 16 threads total. And again, this is coming from an exporter. I didn't hard code any of this, so when you launch it, you'll see your information too. Next is my GPU, and I'm using the NVIDIA GeForce RTX 3090 in this machine, pretty awesome card. But this is my GPU model. Next is my uptime. It only has 2.7 hours because I had to reboot it mid-demo for something after an update. But I did have a couple days on it, and if you have days or weeks, they'll all show up there. Next, we're gonna go over and down and stay on the gray area. We'll go on the right side here in a second, but next is the operating system. So I'm running this on Ubuntu Linux, so it says Linux 6.80 generic. Next, we have the RAM on this machine, and I have 32 gigs of RAM. The system's only seeing 29 gigs. That might be because something about the integrated video card uses a couple gigs. I'm not really sure, but I have 32 gigs and it says 29 gigs, but close enough. It's correct on my other servers. I think it's something to do with this CPU. Next is my GPU driver version, because I never know what my driver version is, and sometimes I need to know it. And rather than remote in and try to figure out the commands I need to run in Linux, it's nice to just have it right here on my dashboard. Then I have the Plex version number, which again, I rarely ever use, but it's nice to have right here if I ever need it. So then on the right side is some of our Plex information. And so first up, I do a count of all of my movies. So these are any movies across any library, and I have 38 movies. Next, I have a card called All Shows, and I have 218 episodes. So what this is doing is counting all episodes from all of my library. Now that could be TV shows, I don't have any, or recorded TV, which I have a lot of. And so this is the aggregate of all episodes across all libraries. So I have 218 episodes, which is recorded shows in my case. So we'll swing around down below that and we'll go to library duration. So my movies would run for 3.65 days if I play them all in a row. And then my recorded TV would go for 13 days even. So that's a lot of TV to watch. Next is library storage. So I have 234 gigs of movies, and then I have 654 gigs of recorded TV. And so this is broken up by library. So if you have 4 libraries, 10 libraries, they'll all enumerate here and create a grid for each library. But I only have 2, that's why it's showing 2. If you have 4, it's gonna create 4 little cards right there and 4 metrics. So pretty cool. Next, we'll go right below it because it still pertains to Plex, and it's stream count. So I break this out and I say, how many current streams do I have? 1. How many video transcodes do I have? 1. How many audio transcodes do I have? 1. And how many direct streams do I have? 0. Now you might be wondering why I have video transcodes and audio transcodes. Well, I do that because audio transcodes can be on the CPU. And if they are on the CPU, it's not really using that much resources at all. It's actually pretty easy. But I've noticed that sometimes when you count transcodes as a whole, audio transcodes get lumped into there. So it's not really fair, I guess, for me to say my server's transcoding right now when it might be only doing audio. So I broke those out because I wrote the code and I could see it. And I distinguished between audio transcodes and video transcodes because really what I'm trying to get down to is what's using my GPU, right? And so audio transcodes of 1 isn't using my GPU, but the video transcodes is. Because sometimes I'll see one of my TVs doesn't have a supported audio codec, and so it will transcode the audio only and not video. And so it looks like on other systems that I use that, hey, it's transcoding right now, but really it's only doing the audio. And I want to show you really quick what I've been working on. This is the dashboard for Prometheus Plex Exporter, the example that I have in there. It's called PPE dashboard. You can see what I'm working on right now. And so I'm doing a count of streams, a count of direct play, video transcodes, audio transcodes, subtitle transcodes, and subtitle burns. So just like I wanted to know with audio whether or not it's getting transcoded, I want to do the same with subtitles too. Because subtitles, when they're burned in, they're done on the CPU, but when you do a subtitle transcode, it's actually going frame by frame using your GPU to do this. And so again, because I'm writing the code, I want to distinguish between those. And this one's coming soon. I need to fix a couple of bugs, but by the time you use this, this will be here. And that's why you don't see it on my main dashboard. But by the time you use this and see it in my GitHub, it will have this as well. So back on my Plex dashboard, now we can see playing sessions. So I just kicked this off, Batman is playing, and you can see down here is a table of all the people streaming stuff from my Plex server. It's just me. And so you can see the title is Batman. You can see it is being transcoded right now. And if it were direct play, this would say direct play and it would be green. You can see the original file resolution, which was 4K, is being transcoded down to 720p. And you can see the bitrate right here. And you can see the platform that's consuming it is this one that I'm on, OS X. So this is on my Mac Studio M2. The app that it's using is Plex Web because we're running it right there in the background. And the server it's coming from is my Plex server, Plunkmaster Plex. So if more devices were streaming from me, you'd see them here. And this is a quick way to see, how many devices are connected and streaming. And a little more information than just these, hero kind of numbers right here. So let's go to the left side because the right side will get more populated as we kind of zoom out. So now you'll see some of my favorite sections. We'll see the GPU utilization, which is 0. And like I said, we see a little bump right there, but not really sure why that happened. Nothing should be actually using the GPU. Most of it is happening on the encoder and decoder. And so that's the next section. So we can see the NVDEC, so the decoder, it kind of ramped up here a little bit and back down. And the same with the encoder, ramped up a little bit here and then ramped back down. And so you'll see this a lot. You'll see like your encoder and decoder spike to 100% and then back down. If you're ever transcoding, it never kind of stays at a steady rate. And I think that the reason it does this is because when it's building up the buffer for streaming, it might need to build up a buffer for, 30 seconds. It's gonna transcode that amount of video and then drop off and wait for the next piece to happen. So you'll see that a lot. It's pretty typical, I've noticed with Plex. Nothing's wrong, that's how it does it. Next, we have the GPU power, and so it ramped up to do the transcoding. Fans are on, it's processing more, and so it's using about 130 watts on the RTX 3090 to do the transcoding. Then we're seeing our GPU temp, so you can kind of see it going up and down, CPU temp going up and down too, and our NVMe drives really is staying pretty stable, and the drive temp for that NVMe is pretty stable as well. I'm gonna stick to the left side a little bit more because these are more stats and vitals on our server. so we could see our network traffic. This is showing all of the adapters that I have here. If you're not running on Docker, this will be a lot cleaner, but as you can see, I have a lot of my virtual adapters for all of my containers. If you don't like seeing all of that, one, you could just filter to one of the adapters right here. So if I wanted to filter, this is the actual adapter, ENP4S0. This is how much it's receiving, 7.93 megabits per second. You can click on them to filter them, click on the same one to unfilter and see them all. Or if you don't want to see that at all, you could limit this to 1 within the query itself. So pretty cool. Next, my temperature sensors, and I mentioned earlier that I love the temperature sensors, so I put them here because I want to see all of my devices at once. Maybe I need to correlate something, say, oh, everything's getting hotter right now, why is that? And it could be, oh, the fan of my server's broken, or it just got really hot down there, or just to be able to see them all in one spot, I think is pretty nice. Next is pressure, and I love this one. I think it's one of the most underrated, but it's telling you if there's pressure either on your disk or your CPU or your RAM, whether it's over allocated or overworking, and then, you can see it in a percentage base. So it's not really busy right now. I think that this one's pretty underrated because between this and maybe your NVENC encoder and decoder right here, you get a really good picture of what's going on. And so, if there's memory pressure, all your memory's being used, maybe it's paging to disk now, this would probably be at 100%. And at a glance, you could look at these two things, you could say, well, something's wrong with RAM, or hey, something's wrong with CPU. But I kind of buried them down because I like the KPIs, the big hero numbers up top. But these are really good to look at. And so if something is wrong, I'll scroll through here and I might see it. Might promote this one at some point. Then we have more vitals. We have our CPU, memory, GPU, I/O, and then our power, our GPU, temperatures down here, so on and so forth. And I put these high water marks right here on the NVMe controller. 70 is okay-ish. As soon as we get into, below 72, it's pretty good. If we get above 72, then we're in the, hey, we're kind of warm. If we get into the 77, hey, we're real hot. And if we get to this number, 79, 80, we should shut it down. Like, it should not be higher than this. And we can set up alerts. I didn't really have time to set up alerts, maybe in a future video, but we could set up alerts to alert on some of these thresholds as well, right? So if my NVMe hard drive ever got above, 70 degrees Celsius, I could send myself an email and display those alerts on my dashboard as well. Maybe part 2. So I showed a lot of metrics right here. What I didn't show is more library information. And this is probably a good point too to discuss, the window right here. So what we're seeing is the last 5 minutes. Some of these are real time over here because the way that I've configured them. Some are less than real time. Some of these I've configured to only check hourly. Like, I don't need to check, every 15 seconds to see if I have new movies. So I've added some configuration to say, hey, just do that calculation hourly. It's not really going to change. And so that's configurable too. You'll see in some of the environment variables. But really what I'm trying to say is that, everything you're seeing is in aggregate over a window, right? And so, if we think about this, this is the 5-minute window. And in this 5-minute window, say for, network, it might check every 15 seconds. And so you have all of those points in that time series, and then it will aggregate or average those together to give you the value you see. That's a lot of information. But what I'm trying to say is, if you go into your task manager or, top on Linux, and you go and look right now, and you say, hey, the CPU is not, 1.5%, it's actually 3%. That's why you see the discrepancy, because this is averaged over a 5-minute window. And so this is really good to see things now, as well as seeing things over time. So, I could see things over the last 30 minutes, or the last 3 hours, or the last 2 days, or even, the last 30 days. And so that's why I think Prometheus and Grafana is really cool, because you can see trends over a longer period of time, as long as you want to hold your data. So if I put my window now to 30 days, now I can see some more information about my library and how it's being used. So the top 10 titles by duration, Big Brother. My wife's been watching Big Brother. And so this isn't just in one day. You got to think this might be 4 Fridays within 30 days. And on top of that, I was doing some testing.
But Big Brother's winning. Next, Nova and Nature, those are me. And then we have some Adventures, some Karate Kid, some Antiques Roadshow. Don't judge me, but I really like Antiques Roadshow still. It's pretty awesome to see. I always hope that someone will just be like, yeah, I thought it was going to be worth more than that. But everyone you see is always acts surprised. But anyways, that's besides the point. Then we have top 10 platforms by duration. So out of duration, which devices played the most? So Plex Web, that's playing the most. A lot of testing by me. But Apple TV, Xbox, iOS, and Plex for Samsung, our TV. Then we get some more metrics. Duration by source resolution, duration by day of week, duration by streamed resolution, and then our top 10 users by duration. And you can see it's all me, mainly because I'm the one signed in to all of these devices. So I'm sharing this dashboard with you. If you don't like how it's configured or customized, you can add and remove or change anything you like on here. You know, if you wanted this stat to be super big here, you know, and get rid of this altogether, you totally can. That's totally within your right. There's so much you could change and so much you could do. And there's so much data you can pull out and put into a chart. I'm super excited to see what you come up with.
So why does this matter? Well, now when a stream buffers, I can tell instantly whether it's the network, the disk, or a surprise multi-transcode. I can spot creeping storage usage, failing drives, or even an overheating GPU before it becomes a problem. And with that data is how you monitor your Plex server like a pro. A huge thanks to Plex again for sponsoring this video for Plex Pro Week, and thank you to all of the open source tools that made this happen. All of the files, Compose configs, Prometheus configs, and Grafana dashboards are linked below in the notes. Feel free to clone them and make them your own. Also, Plex is launching their own developer API, so I'll definitely keep an eye out for that and integrate it into this project in the future. And if you do build your own panels, share which ones you built in the comments. I'd love to see what you come up with. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm Tim. Thanks for watching.